She should have known something was wrong the moment she saw the woman at the table. Elise had arrived 10 minutes early, nervously brushing non-existent lint from her navy dress, her heart racing with the reckless hope that tonight would be different, that maybe this time, the blind date wouldn't end in awkward silence or lukewarm smiles. But nothing, not her best friend's enthusiastic text. "Trust me, she's amazing," not the photos exchanged, not even the name, Anna, had prepared her for the woman who lifted her eyes and pierced right through her with a look of such composed power that Elise nearly forgot how to breathe. "Elise?" the woman asked, voice smooth, low, expensive. Elise blinked, nodded, walked over on autopilot, and sat down across from her, knees trembling under the table. But 2 minutes in, something felt off. Not wrong, just not what she expected. This woman, tall, statuesque, impeccably dressed in a sleek black suit that screamed designer label, with an elegance so natural it had to be habitual, wasn't the bubbly vet tech Elise had been told to expect. And yet she couldn't make herself leave. Couldn't stop herself from answering questions, laughing when the woman quirked an eyebrow and asked, "So, Elise, what exactly were you hoping for tonight?" Elise answered honestly, "To feel like I'm not wasting my time." The woman smiled, slow and dangerous. "Then maybe you sat at the right table after all." It wasn't until 35 minutes into wine, shared charcuterie, and the kind of eye contact that felt like it left fingerprints on her skin, that a flustered brunette approached their table. "I'm sorry, are you Elise? I think we're supposed to be meeting for the blind date." Silence fell like a stone between them. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Elise turned slowly, confused, then looked back at the woman in the suit, who was now sipping her wine with a faint smirk. "You're not Anna?" Elise asked, voice tight with embarrassment. The woman leaned in, eyes gleaming.
"No."
"But I really hoped you wouldn't realize that just yet." Heat flushed Elise's entire body. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because you looked like you needed saving. And frankly, I needed an excuse to talk to you." "Talk to me?" "You walked in like a question I wanted to answer," the woman said simply. "So, I took the risk." Elise stood up, heart hammering. Her real date was already sitting down at a nearby table, her voice overly sweet, her presence already wrong. "I should go," Elise murmured. "You don't have to. This is insane." "Is it?" the woman countered. "Or is this what a moment looks like before it changes everything?" Elise hesitated, halfway between two tables, between two realities. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman rose slowly, extending a hand. "Victoria Langford, CEO of Langford Hotels. And if you sit back down, Elise, I promise you this night won't be something you'll want to forget." The name hit Elise like a thunderclap. Everyone in the city knew Langford. Victoria Langford wasn't just rich. She was a force. Elise stared at her, at the unshakable calm, the amused challenge in her eyes, and against all logic, all reason, against the pull of politeness and expectation, she sat back down. "You're bold," Elise said. "You're brave," Victoria replied. "There's a difference. And this isn't just a game to you?" "No," Victoria said, more serious now. "This is instinct. And I always trust my instincts." They talked for another hour.
2.
Long after the mistaken date had come and gone, long after the staff began clearing the other tables, Elise found herself telling Victoria things she hadn't said out loud in years. About her failed startup, her fear of settling, her craving for something real. Victoria listened like she was memorizing her. And when Victoria finally said, "I'd like to see you again," it didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable. Elise walked home that night under a sky full of stars, holding her phone like it might burn her hand, because it now held a message from Victoria Langford. Not a missed connection. A spark. And sparks, Elise knew, could become fires. She just hadn't expected to want one quite so badly. Elise stared at her phone all morning like it was mocking her. She'd barely slept the night before, too wired from the adrenaline of it all. Victoria's voice still echoing in her head, that amused, confident smile imprinted behind her eyelids. It wasn't just that Victoria Langford had kissed her hand before leaving, murmuring, "Until next time," like a promise wrapped in silk. It was how Elise had responded to it, how she'd melted into that touch, how she'd wanted that next time more than she was willing to admit. But that was the problem. This wasn't normal. It wasn't logical. It wasn't safe. Elise had been on exactly 17 dates since her last real relationship ended 2 years ago. 17 women, and not one of them made her feel what Victoria had managed to do in less than an hour. Which either meant Victoria was dangerous, or Elise was desperate. Or both. By noon, the message finally came. Friday, 8 p.m., I'll send a car. Bring an appetite. No emojis. No unnecessary words. Just direct, controlled, and somehow still dripping with the same seduction Elise had felt across the table last night. She typed and deleted her reply 3 times before settling on, "Should I be nervous?" The response came almost instantly. "Only if you plan on lying to me." Elise stared at the screen, pulse quickening. Was this a date? Was this a power play? Was this some game rich people played when they were bored? Or was this what it felt like when you finally collided with someone operating on the same unspoken frequency? Elise spent the rest of the week in a fog of anticipation and dread, alternating between replaying every moment of their first meeting and convincing herself it had all been a fluke. Her best friend, Lila, laughed when she finally told her. "Wait, the Victoria Langford?" Lila shrieked. As in Billionaire hotel heiress turned empire builder / ice queen of Manhattan? "She's not an ice queen," Elise said automatically, then paused. "Okay, maybe a little, but not with me." "Oh my God, she's going to eat you alive." Elise glared. "Thank you for the confidence boost. No, I mean it in a hot way. Like, you'll thank her after." Elise threw a pillow at her. But the truth was, Lila wasn't wrong. Victoria exuded the kind of magnetism that dared you to touch, even as it warned you you'd probably burn. Friday arrived with a city storm. Rain slicked over sidewalks. Thunder grumbled low across the skyline, and Elise found herself pacing in her tiny apartment like it was a cage. At exactly 7:50, a sleek black town car pulled up outside. The driver held a black umbrella, said, "Miss Elise?" and escorted her like she was royalty. Elise wore a fitted wine-colored dress, just daring enough to be noticed, but not so bold it betrayed how out of her depth she felt. When the car stopped in front of one of the Langford hotels, not the flagship downtown, but a boutique one in Tribeca, Elise's stomach dropped. "She's taking me to her own hotel?" she whispered to herself. She was met in the lobby by a hostess who greeted her by name and led her not to the main restaurant, but to a private elevator. "Ms. Langford is waiting upstairs." Elise stepped into the penthouse suite and immediately understood. It wasn't a dinner reservation. It was a world Victoria had curated. Soft jazz played from somewhere unseen. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a glittering cityscape. A private chef stood behind a small marble kitchen island, finishing plates with quiet precision. Victoria was standing at the bar, pouring 2 glasses of wine, wearing a silk blouse tucked into tailored black trousers, barefoot, as if to remind Elise that even queens could be comfortable in their kingdoms. "You came," Victoria said, smiling without surprise. "Was there a chance I wouldn't?" Elise asked. Victoria handed her a glass. "Everyone has a choice. I was hoping you'd make the right one." Dinner was surreal, delicious, intimate. The conversation danced between playful and vulnerable. Elise told stories about her chaotic childhood, about the first time she fell in love with a woman, and how it ended in heartbreak. Victoria listened with unnerving focus, offering little about herself, but asking questions that made Elise feel seen in ways she didn't understand. Finally, Elise put her fork down and said, "Why me?" Victoria sipped her wine. "What do you mean?" "You could have anyone. You probably have had everyone. So why go after some woman sitting at the wrong table?" "Because I wasn't looking for someone perfect. I was looking for someone real." "And you think that's me?" Victoria met her gaze. I think you're pretending you don't want this as much as I do. Elise swallowed hard. This is moving fast. Then tell me to stop. Elise opened her mouth, then closed it. I can't. Victoria reached out, brushing her fingers lightly over Elise's wrist. The touch was electric. Good, she murmured, because I don't like playing games. But I also don't offer second chances if someone walks away. Is that a threat? Elise asked. No, Victoria said softly. It's a boundary. Elise leaned in, the tension between them taut and humming. What exactly are the rules then? No lying. No pretending. No half measures. If we do this, Elise, we do it completely. Elise should have run. Should have said she needed time. But instead, she whispered, then I guess I'm all in. Victoria smiled like a wolf in velvet, and for the first time, Elise didn't feel like prey. She felt like a match held to gasoline. Elise hadn't intended to stay. She had told herself out loud, in the car ride, 3 times, that she would eat, keep things light, leave with dignity. She had worn perfume but not heels, lipstick but not red. A careful balance. Measured. Controlled. But nothing about being near Victoria Langford was controllable. Nothing about the way she looked at Elise, like she was the most fascinating risk in the room. Nothing about the way her voice dipped low when she said Elise's name like it was a secret too delicious to share. And now, somehow, it was nearly midnight and Elise was barefoot on a velvet rug, a glass of wine forgotten on the coffee table, and Victoria was sitting close, too close, watching her like she could taste every flicker of emotion that passed over Elise's face. You said you don't play games, Elise murmured. But this feels like one. Then maybe you're not used to being wanted, Victoria replied, voice smooth as silk, but with that dangerous honesty curling beneath it. At least not like this. You don't even know me, Elise said, not sure if she wanted to argue or confess. You don't know what I've done, what I've failed at. I know your eyes give away more than your words do. I know your laugh isn't something you offer freely. I know you hide behind sarcasm because honesty scares you. And I know you're terrified of the fact that you want this right now, more than you want to keep yourself safe. Elise stared at her, breath caught in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Like they weren't just listening but reading. This is insane, she whispered. Maybe, Victoria said, tilting her head. But it's real.
And it was.
That was the terrifying part. Because Elise had dated women who said all the right things, but never made her feel this raw. She had been admired, complimented, even loved, but never seen. Not like this. Victoria stood, crossed the space between them, and offered her hand. Come here. Elise hesitated, then placed her fingers in Victoria's palm. She expected Victoria to kiss her. Instead, she led her to the massive window overlooking the city. What do you see? She asked. Lights, Elise said, breath shallow.
Noise.
Distance. I see opportunity.
Power.
1,000 lives happening all at once. And in all of them, I still want to be right here. Elise turned, found Victoria's eyes already on her. With me? Yes. Elise didn't speak. She couldn't, because her body was already leaning forward, pulled by something magnetic and irreversible. When their lips finally met, it wasn't soft. It was claiming. It was need pressed into every inch of skin. Elise melted and burned all at once, her hands tangling in Victoria's silk blouse as Victoria's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her in like she'd waited forever for this exact contact. It wasn't perfect, it was hungry. And Elise realized, somewhere between the second kiss and the third, that she hadn't touched anyone in months. Not like this. Not without regret. When Victoria finally pulled back, both of them breathless, Elise didn't step away. Is this still instinct? She asked, voice trembling. This, Victoria said, her forehead resting lightly against Elise's, is certainty. Elise exhaled, long and shaky. I can't just fall into something without knowing where it's going. Then tell me what you need to feel safe. Consistency, Elise whispered. Honesty. No disappearing. No using me like a distraction. You're not a distraction, Victoria said firmly. You're the first thing I've wanted for myself in a long time. But you're you. You live in a different world. Then I'll make space in mine for you. Elise wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to. But life had taught her not to trust grand gestures. So she stepped back, heart still thudding in her chest, and said, "Then prove it." Victoria's smile returned, small but sharp.
Dinner.
Tomorrow night. My driver will take you home tonight and pick you up again at 7. You choose the place this time. Your world. Elise narrowed her eyes. And you'll actually show up? I never say things I don't mean, Elise. And somehow, Elise knew that was true. She left the penthouse in a daze, fingers still tingling from the way Victoria had held her. She climbed into the car with a mind full of what-ifs, of maybes, of too much too soon. But beneath it all, steady and unmistakable, was a thread of hope. Not the naive kind she'd carried into other dates. This was sharper, heavier, and much, much more dangerous. The next morning, Elise made the reservation at her favorite hidden Italian spot, a tiny hole-in-the-wall in Brooklyn, run by a retired opera singer and her wife. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't rich. But it was hers. She didn't tell Lila the details, just that she was seeing her again. Lila smirked and muttered something about gluttons for punishment, but Elise didn't care. She wasn't chasing chaos. She was walking straight into it, eyes open. The restaurant was dimly lit and quiet when Elise arrived, 15 minutes early. She wore black jeans, boots, a soft red blouse, and the tiniest bit of eyeliner. Nothing like the polished woman Victoria had met at the penthouse. She wanted to be real. She wanted Victoria to meet all of her, messy, hopeful, afraid. At exactly 7 o'clock, the door opened, and Victoria walked in. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back. She wore a leather jacket over a t-shirt and jeans. No heels. And when she saw Elise, her whole face softened. "You said your world," Victoria murmured as she sat down. "So here I am." And just like that, the balance shifted. Not power for power. Not seduction for obedience. But something else. Something frighteningly close to equal footing. Elise smiled. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't pretending. And neither was Victoria. The waitress smiled when she saw them. Elise and Victoria, seated across from each other in the quietest corner of the restaurant, elbows on the rustic wood table, 2 glasses of wine already poured, untouched. Elise couldn't stop staring at Victoria. She'd seen her in heels and silk in the glittering penthouse above the city. But like this, barefaced, relaxed, dressed in something that didn't cost half Elise's rent, she was dangerous in a new way. Less untouchable. More real. More tempting. "You're quiet tonight," Victoria said gently, running her finger along the rim of her glass. Elise blinked. "I'm just processing." Bad sign. "Not yet." Elise smiled faintly. "I think I'm just not used to this." "Dinner?"
No.
"You. Showing up like this. Letting me see the person behind the name." Victoria's gaze sharpened. "Is that what you're doing? Looking for cracks? I'm looking for something that doesn't scare me." And Elise tilted her head. Still deciding. Victoria laughed softly, a sound Elise was beginning to crave. "That's fair." They ordered pasta and red wine and shared bread like old lovers instead of 2 women who'd technically only just met. Conversation floated between them like it belonged there. Effortless, surprising. Elise asked about Victoria's first job. Victoria told her she'd once worked the front desk of her father's hotel under a fake name for an entire summer. "He wanted me to earn the right to run the business," she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "He thought I needed to understand what it was like to work 12 hours on your feet and still smile." "And did you understand?" Victoria sipped her wine. "Not right away. I was angry, but I learned. And now I hire people who remind me of that summer. People who make me want to be better." Elise studied her. "You weren't what I expected." "What were you expecting?" A woman who builds hotel empires doesn't usually show up in Converse and a leather jacket. I don't usually show up, Victoria said quietly. Not like this. Elise's chest tightened. She hated how much she wanted to believe her, how every carefully placed wall inside her was already starting to bend. So why now? She asked. Why me? Victoria leaned forward, elbows on the table. Because you're complicated. And I like complicated. Elise laughed, caught off guard. You're the only person who's ever said that like it's a compliment. It is. Most people want easy.
Simple.
Predictable. But you make me work for it. You make me want to earn the next word out of your mouth. Elise flushed. You don't even know if I snore yet. I'll find out eventually. That's a bold assumption. I told you, Victoria said, voice lower now. I don't chase things I don't want. And I don't say things I don't mean. Elise took a long sip of wine, trying to steady herself. It wasn't just the flirting. It was how Victoria made it feel safe to want something back. You scare me, she said quietly, because I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop waiting for me to disappear. That made Elise pause. Everyone disappears eventually. Then I guess I'll have to prove you wrong. Dinner ended in the kind of silence that wasn't awkward. It was full, electric. Neither of them rushed to leave. When they finally stepped out into the cool Brooklyn night, the city felt gentler somehow, more forgiving. Let me take you home, Victoria said. Elise hesitated. No pressure, Victoria added. Just let me be the person who gets you there safe. That was the problem. She wanted Victoria to take her home. She wanted the pressure,
The ache.
the unraveling. But she also wanted to keep a shred of herself intact. So she nodded, and when the driver pulled up, she slid into the back seat beside Victoria in silence. Halfway across the bridge, Victoria reached across the seat and took Elise's hand. Just that. Fingers laced, warm and certain. Elise looked down at their hands, then at Victoria's profile in the soft city glow. Do you always get what you want? She asked. No, Victoria said. But I always fight for it. And what if I don't want to be a thing to win? Victoria turned to her. Then tell me how to make you feel like more. Elise exhaled, heart hammering. I don't need grand gestures. Good. Because I don't make them. I make plans. When the car stopped outside Elise's building, Victoria stepped out first, opened her door. Elise stared at her. You really want to come up? I want what you want, Victoria said. But I'm not here for just one night. Then why are you here? Victoria stepped closer. Because I think I could fall for you. And I don't say that lightly. Elise's breath caught. You barely know me. Then let me. Elise was trembling. Not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. Okay, she whispered. Come up. Inside, Elise's apartment was small, warm, cluttered with art prints and mismatched furniture, a half-drunk cup of tea on the counter and books stacked beside the couch. Victoria walked in slowly, like she didn't want to disturb anything. This feels like you, she said. It is me, Elise replied. Flawed and unfiltered. Good, Victoria murmured. That's the version I want. They didn't kiss right away. They sat on the couch, knees touching, talking about everything and nothing. Elise showed her a painting she'd done. Victoria asked about the scar on her hand. And when the silence came, thick and sweet, it was Victoria who leaned in first. This kiss was different. Slower. Less urgent. But deeper somehow. Elise felt it in her spine. In her gut. In the part of her that never let anyone all the way in. When they finally pulled apart, Elise pressed her forehead to Victoria's. This is happening, isn't it? Yes, Victoria whispered. Unless you don't want it to. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. That's what makes it honest. Elise smiled. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was about to lose something. She felt like she was about to begin. Elise woke up to sunlight slanting through her bedroom window and the softest warmth at her back. For a few disoriented seconds, she thought she'd dreamed it all. The dinner, the wine, the way Victoria had looked at her like she was already hers. But then she shifted slightly and felt fingers tighten gently around her waist. A breath, slow and steady, near her neck. And Victoria's voice, sleepy, low, intimate, saying, "Good morning." Elise didn't move. She let the silence stretch, let the moment settle over her skin like a second blanket. This wasn't just waking up next to someone. It felt like waking up inside a decision she hadn't realized she'd already made. "You stayed," she whispered. Victoria pressed her lips to Elise's shoulder. "You asked me to. I didn't think you'd actually. I meant what I said. No half measures." Elise turned, slowly, until they were facing each other in the sheets. Victoria looked softer in the morning light, hair slightly tousled, eyes heavy with sleep, but still alert. "You always look this composed when you wake up?" Elise asked, voice light. Victoria smirked. "You're the first person who's ever been in bed with me to ask." Elise raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so I'm just another first for you?" "No," Victoria said, more serious now. "You're the one I never expected to want this badly." Elise's chest tightened. "You don't even know if I hog the covers." "You do," Victoria said dryly. "But I don't mind." They laughed. The kind of laugh that cracked something open. After a long pause, Elise asked, "What happens now?" "Breakfast. Then you tell me how your day looks. And I try to fit into it." "You want to fit into my day?" Elise asked, skeptical. "Don't you have an empire to run?" "Empires can wait a few hours," Victoria said. "Besides, you're harder to manage than most of my board." Elise blinked.
Wow.
"Romantic." "Don't take it personally. I like a challenge." "And you think I'm a challenge?" "You're a locked vault with a key you don't trust anyone to use," Victoria said. "And yet here I am." That made Elise go quiet, because she didn't want to admit how true it was. How terrifying and exhilarating it was to let someone in. They ate breakfast on the couch, Victoria in one of Elise's oversized t-shirts, Elise in leggings and a messy bun, coffee in mismatched mugs, and eggs slightly overcooked. It felt domestic in a way that was both foreign and intoxicating. Elise couldn't remember the last time she let herself share a morning like this. Not just the bed. The morning. The normalcy. "You're too good at this," Elise said at one point. "At what?" "Making people feel like they matter." "That's not a trick," Victoria said gently. "At least not with you." Elise looked at her, trying to read between the words. "So, what do you want out of this?" "Really?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "I want to know you. All of you. The good, the complicated, the scared, the brilliant. I want the version you don't show anyone." "And then what?" "Then I decide if I can handle it," Victoria said with a teasing smile. "Spoiler alert, I already know I can." Elise stared at her. "You don't play fair." "No," Victoria said softly. "I play real." Elise's phone buzzed. It was a text from her client, a last-minute website issue that needed her attention. "Duty calls," she muttered, standing. "Work. Freelance design. One of my clients is panicking over a banner ad." "Can I come?" Elise turned slowly. "To what?" "Watch me code. And swear at my screen." "Exactly," Victoria said. "I want to see your world, remember? That part of my world is messy." "Good. Then I'll feel right at home." Elise didn't know why she said yes. Maybe because she didn't want to let the moment end. Or maybe because she wanted to see if Victoria could actually fit into her life, instead of just making her fit into hers. The next few hours were surreal. Elise working from her tiny home office, Victoria curled up on the couch with her laptop, handling some investor call like it was just background noise. At one point, Victoria brought her coffee without being asked. At another, Elise looked over and caught her watching with a quiet smile. No words, no judgment. Just watching. It unnerved her. It also thrilled her. Around 3 p.m., Elise sat back and groaned. "I need air." "Walk," Victoria asked. "Sure." They walked through the neighborhood, hands brushing, not quite holding. The autumn air was crisp, golden leaves crunching beneath their feet. Elise felt like she was walking through a dream with the most impossible woman by her side. But dreams always came with an expiration date. And Elise couldn't ignore the gnawing question inside her anymore. Victoria, she said, stopping. We need to talk about boundaries. Victoria turned to face her, instantly serious. Okay. You say you don't want games. That this is real. But I can't do this unless I know where we're going. Where do you want to go? Victoria asked. Elise swallowed hard. I want something that's mine. Not temporary. Not convenient. Not a secret. Victoria's jaw tightened, just slightly. You think I'd keep you a secret? You're one of the most powerful women in the city, Elise said. I'm a struggling freelance designer who can barely pay rents a month. You don't think people are going to talk? Let them. It's not that easy. It can be, Victoria said, if we choose each other. Elise looked down at her shoes. I've been someone's secret before. I promised myself I'd never do it again. Then you won't, Victoria said, stepping closer. I don't need to hide you. I need to protect you. But that doesn't mean I'll pretend you don't exist. Elise looked up. And what about your world? Your rules? We'll make new ones, Victoria said. Ones that fit us. Elise wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. So she kissed her instead. On a street corner. In broad daylight. In front of the world. And for once, she didn't care who saw. It took less than 72 hours for the outside world to find them. Elise didn't even realize what was happening at first. She was working late from her apartment, earbuds in, head down, completely absorbed in a rush client project when her phone buzzed with 3 texts in a row from Lila. All caps. Elise, holy shit. Check the gossip sites right now. Your face. Your actual face. Elise blinked, confused, and pulled up her browser. Her fingers trembled before she even typed the search. She didn't need to enter Victoria's name. Her own was enough now. Elise Harper. She hit enter. The first headline made her stomach drop. Mystery woman spotted with Langford heiress. Who is she? The image was sharp, intrusive, a zoomed-in photo of Elise and Victoria holding hands in Brooklyn, sunlight spilling down between them. It was clearly from 2 days ago. The second article was worse. Too pretty to be a secret. Victoria Langford's new normal girlfriend raises eyebrows. Elise's hands froze on the keyboard. There were 7 articles already circulating, each speculating on who she was, what she did, what she looked like, why Victoria would be seen in public with someone like her. Normal, one site called her. Plain but endearing. Another speculated she was a paid companion, a disgusting euphemism Elise had never thought she'd see attached to her name. Her LinkedIn was LinkedIn 1. So was her website. And her most recent Instagram post had gone from 67 likes to over 4,000 in a matter of hours. The comments were vicious, curious, some kind, most not. She sat frozen in her desk chair, heart pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape her body. A knock at her door nearly made her scream. When she opened it, Victoria was standing there. Not in designer heels or her power suit armor, but in jeans and a coat, holding 2 coffees. Her expression shifted the moment she saw Elise's face. You saw it. Elise stepped back without a word and let her in. It's everywhere, she said numbly. I know. You didn't warn me. I didn't know it would happen this fast, Victoria said, closing the door behind her. Someone must have tipped them off. Maybe a pedestrian. Maybe someone from my own staff. I'm sorry. They think I'm some hired something. They're vultures, Victoria said. They feed off assumptions. My client saw it. Elise's voice cracked. My inbox is full of people asking if I'm available for press. Like I don't even know what they think I am. I can call someone. Have the photos taken down. But it's out there now, Elise snapped. It's out there and I'm out there and I didn't get to choose that. Victoria took a breath, calm and steady. You're right. And I should have prepared you. But I can't control the press. I can only control how I respond to it and how I protect you. Protect me? Elise repeated. I don't want protection. I want to not feel like my life just became someone else's circus. Victoria stepped closer. Then let's deal with it. Together. What does that even mean? Elise demanded. Are you going to post a statement? Tell them I'm not some escort or social climber. Or are you going to disappear until the headlines change? You think I'd disappear now? Victoria's voice was low, dangerous. You think I'd run when it gets difficult? Elise opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't know what she was thinking. She only knew that her world had been turned inside out without warning, and the woman who had walked so confidently into her life had also dragged her into the light without asking if she was ready. I don't know what I think, Elise admitted, softer now. But I know I feel exposed. And small. And like none of this is mine anymore. Victoria's eyes softened. She reached out, but Elise took a step back. Not yet, Elise whispered. Okay, Victoria said gently. I'll give you space. But not distance. I'm not going anywhere, Elise. Not unless you ask me to. Elise didn't respond. She just nodded. Victoria left quietly. And Elise collapsed on her couch, phone still buzzing beside her, the weight of being seen without consent settling into her skin like frost. The next morning, she woke up to a new post on Victoria's official Instagram, a single photo, unfiltered, of Elise's painting from her living room wall. The caption read, "The most beautiful things are the ones that weren't meant for show." It had over 200,000 likes in 2 hours. Elise didn't know how to feel. It wasn't a full gesture, but it was something. And it reminded her that Victoria had seen her, had remembered. But it didn't stop the calls, or the comments, or the whispers from neighbors she didn't even know. The media storm only got louder. Her work suffered. She couldn't concentrate. She couldn't sleep. And when she finally answered Lila's 5th call, she didn't even have the energy to fake a smile. I didn't sign up for this, she told her. I just wanted to fall in love with someone who made me feel safe. You're falling in love? Lila asked carefully. Elise froze. I didn't mean, yes you did, Lila said. And that's okay. But you need to ask yourself, is this about the press? Or is this about what loving her will always come with? Elise sat in silence long after the call ended. That night, she opened her door and found Victoria waiting again. No security. No driver. Just her, hands in her coat pockets, looking tired and human and impossibly steady. I don't have a solution, Victoria said. But I'm here. Elise let her in. I don't want to disappear, she said quietly. But I also don't want to lose myself. Then don't, Victoria said. Let me meet you in the middle. We'll find the line together. And for the first time since the world had cracked open, Elise believed they just might. The apartment was too quiet after Victoria left again. Elise sat at her desk, eyes unfocused, staring at the same line of code she'd been editing for 30 minutes. She knew the problem wasn't in the code. It was in her. In the swirl of uncertainty that had taken up permanent residence in her chest since the articles dropped. She'd never imagined what it would feel like to be thrown into someone else's spotlight. Her life had always been hers, private, low profile, hers to shape and rebuild. And now, people she didn't know had opinions about her lips, her resume, the angle of her shoulders when she walked beside a woman who commanded boardrooms. And worse, she had no control over it. But Victoria had looked at her like none of that mattered. She hadn't tried to fix it with promises or PR. She hadn't offered hush money or fake statements. She'd just shown up, again and again, with coffee and calm and that relentless steadiness in her eyes. And Elise wasn't used to being shown up for. She didn't know what to do with it, until a single message appeared on her phone, 2 days later, just as the anxiety began to crack her at the seams again. Dinner. Friday. With me. And a very specific question I need to ask you.
Please say yes.
Elise stared at the screen, heart suddenly pounding for an entirely different reason. Victoria hadn't texted her since that night. She'd given space as promised.
But now?
Now she was calling her back in, and Elise couldn't deny that something inside her wanted to be called. She waited an hour before replying, fingers trembling. Yes. The car came exactly at 6:45, and this time Elise didn't second-guess her outfit. She wore something that felt like her. Casual, structured, dark green with silver earrings and her hair pulled back in a soft twist. When she stepped out of the car, it wasn't a restaurant that greeted her. It was a townhouse in the West Village. Quiet, elegant, lit from within. The door opened before she knocked. Victoria stood there in bare feet and black cashmere, holding a glass of red wine and looking, somehow, completely untouchable and completely hers at the same time. "You came," Victoria said softly. Elise walked in. "You asked." Victoria smiled, closed the door behind her, and led her through the townhouse, every inch tastefully decorated, but warm, lived in. Not a showroom, not a press trap, just a home. Victoria handed her a second glass of wine, and for a long moment, they didn't speak. The quiet was comfortable now, loaded, familiar. And then Victoria said, "I want to ask you something that might scare you, but I promise it comes from the right place." Elise nodded slowly. "Okay. I have a retreat next week. A corporate one. One of our properties in Vermont. Board members, VPs, investors. It's a thing I can't get out of, and I hate going alone." Elise blinked. "You want me to come?" "I want you there," Victoria said. "But not as decoration. I want them to see you." Elise felt the shift in the air like a click. "Why?" "Because I want to make it real. Not just for us. For everyone." Elise stared at her. "You want me to be introduced to your company? To your people?" "Yes." "That's not small. Neither is what I feel for you." Elise stepped back, the weight of it hitting her all at once. "Victoria, you can say no," Victoria said quickly. "You can say it's too much. That I'm asking for something you're not ready to give. But I need you to know I'm not doing this lightly. I don't want to be something that only happens in private. I want to be the woman who walks into a room with you on her arm and dares anyone to question it." Elise's chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths. "You're used to being watched," she said. "You know how to carry that attention. I don't." "You don't have to carry it," Victoria said gently. "I will. I just want you there beside me." Elise turned, walked to the window, stared out at the dark street. Her reflection floated in the glass, half-formed, uncertain. "What would I even say to them?" "You'll say what you want," Victoria replied. "You don't have to prove anything. You just have to be exactly who you are." Elise turned slowly. "And if I mess up? Then we laugh, we drink, we disappear into the woods and make out by a fire pit until we forget the whole thing." Elise burst out laughing. The sound caught her by surprise. So did the warmth that followed. "You're serious about this," she said. "I am. But you barely know me. I know I've never felt like this before." Elise walked toward her, heart a riot inside her chest. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," Victoria admitted. "But it's worth it. And so are you." Elise stared up at her. "I'll come," she whispered. "To Vermont." Victoria's breath left her in a rush, like she hadn't allowed herself to hope. "Really?"
Yes.
"But on one condition." "Anything." "You tell me one thing about you that scares you to say out loud." Victoria went still. Then slowly, she set her wine down and stepped closer. "I've never brought anyone to something like this," she said. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I was always afraid they'd disappoint me, or I'd disappoint them. That I'd let them too close, and they'd see I'm not as in control as I pretend to be." Elise blinked. "That's your fear? That I'm not enough when the suit comes off." Elise reached up and touched her cheek. "You are." "And you are," Victoria replied. "More than enough." That night, they didn't rush anything. They cooked together, burned the garlic, laughed too hard, danced barefoot in the kitchen. They fell asleep wrapped around each other. No urgency, no pressure, just warmth and breath and skin. Elise didn't know what Vermont would bring. She only knew that for the first time since the photos leaked, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a choice again. And this time, she was choosing forward. The air in Vermont was colder than Elise expected. It wasn't just the temperature, it was the altitude, the distance, the sharp way the wind cut across her cheeks when she stepped out of the car. There were pine trees that reached endlessly into the sky, and mountains that rose like ancient, unmoving judges in the background. The Langford property itself was stunning, a sprawling, glass and wood luxury resort tucked into the side of a mountain, private, serene, and deliberately unreachable by the outside world. It looked like it had been plucked from the pages of an architectural magazine and dropped onto a snow-dusted dreamscape. And Elise? Elise felt like a smudge on an otherwise perfect photograph. She wore a fitted cream coat and her best boots, and still, as soon as she stepped inside the stone and cedar lobby, she felt eyes on her.
Subtle.
Calculated. A flicker of recognition from the front desk staff. A pause from the man in the tailored coat by the fire. Elise had always been good at reading a room. This one told her she wasn't expected, and worse, she wasn't trusted. "Stop," Victoria said, leaning in just enough so that her voice reached only Elise's ears. "They don't matter." "They do," Elise murmured. "You built this world. You brought me into it. I just want to know how to walk through it without tripping over invisible rules." Victoria took her hand. "You walk through it like it's already yours." But Elise wasn't sure that was true. The staff escorted them to the private wing reserved for executives, and everything was polished, controlled, intimidating. Elise didn't know where to put her hands, how to stand, what expression to hold on her face when they passed people in suits who looked at her like a misplaced guest. Victoria, meanwhile, was a different creature here. Her walk changed. Her voice. She spoke with authority, nodded with weight, her presence commanding without effort. Watching her like this, flawless, confident, sharp, Elise felt both proud and hollow. Proud because she admired her. Hollow because she wasn't sure where she fit in this version of Victoria's life. Their suite was massive. Windows overlooking the valley, a fireplace already lit, a welcome basket on the table with their names on it. Elise walked in and sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaling slowly. "You okay?" Victoria asked, sitting beside her. "Just processing." "Wanna leave?" "No," Elise said quickly. "I want to learn how to stay." Victoria reached for her hand. "Then I'll help you." That evening, there was a welcome reception. Cocktail hour. Fireplaces. Crystal glasses. Thin smiles. Elise wore black. Clean, simple, elegant, and still felt like a fraud as she stepped into the room on Victoria's arm. The guests were powerful. Men in custom suits. Women with sharp eyes and practiced poise. Elise caught bits of conversation. Mergers, projections, equity. It all felt like a language she'd never learned. But Victoria stayed close, introducing her as simply and directly as possible. "This is Elise. She's with me." Some nodded. Some smiled too politely. Some blinked in surprise. One woman, a striking executive named Cassandra with dark red lipstick and a gaze that could cut steel, tilted her head and said, "So you're the reason Victoria's finally breathing again." Elise froze. Victoria answered before she could. "She's the reason I'm finally living again." Cassandra raised a glass.
"Well,
"I suppose I can't argue with that." Elise smiled, but it felt thin. Later, after too many stairs and too few safe places to land, she stepped outside onto the balcony alone. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed it. She needed something real, something unscripted. Behind her, the door opened. "Victoria." "Of course." "You left," she said softly. "Just for air." "Too much." Elise nodded. "But I'm still here. I saw you with Cassandra." "She's direct," Victoria said. "Always has been." "Is there a history there?" Elise didn't look at her when she asked.
"Yes."
"A long time ago. It didn't mean anything. Not like this." Elise finally turned. "It's not jealousy," she said. "It's just this isn't my world. I feel like I need permission to exist in it." "You don't," Victoria said, stepping close. "You're not here because I brought you. You're here because you belong with me, and I belong here. So by definition, they're going to have to adjust." Elise smiled, this time genuinely. "You make it sound easy." "It's not, but it's ours." That night, back in the suite, Elise stood at the window in silence while Victoria undressed behind her. Do you ever get tired of fighting to be taken seriously? Elise asked. Every day, Victoria answered. But I don't fight for them. I fight for what matters. Elise turned, slowly. And I matter? Victoria crossed to her, hands gentle on Elise's waist. You matter more than anything I've built. Elise kissed her like it was the only thing she could do to hold herself together. Like maybe, if she kissed her hard enough, long enough, deeply enough, the ache of not fitting in would disappear. The night blurred after that. Slow touches. Warm sheets. Words whispered in the dark. And in the morning, Elise woke up before the sun, slipped out of bed, wrapped herself in a blanket, and sat by the window to watch the mountains. They didn't care who she was. Didn't ask for her resume. Didn't demand she prove her worth. They just were. Immense. Indifferent. Constant. And something about that made her feel a little less alone. Elise hadn't expected the boardroom to feel like a battlefield. But from the moment she stepped through the doors with Victoria at her side, she felt the temperature shift. Eyes flicked up. Some smiled. Some didn't. The long table stretched across the sleek, modern room like a barrier, and everyone seated at it looked like they'd been born knowing exactly how to command a room. Elise didn't speak. She stood slightly behind Victoria's shoulder, not out of submission, but because it felt safer there, like she could watch without being watched too much in return. It was supposed to be a casual breakfast, nothing official, just a meeting between key stakeholders and executives. Victoria had told her that being present was enough, that she didn't need to say anything, that her existence in the room was a statement in itself. But Elise could feel the unspoken questions buzzing in the air. Why is she here? What does she know? How serious is this? The table buzzed with conversation, half of which she didn't understand. Numbers, quarterly projections, site expansions, language that sounded polished and distant. Elise tried to stay relaxed, tried to smile where it felt appropriate, nod when Victoria leaned slightly back in her chair and brushed her hand across Elise's wrist like a silent check-in. But then, mid-conversation, one of the senior partners, an older man in a navy suit with sharp cheekbones and a sharper tongue, turned his eyes directly to her. Miss Harper, isn't it? Elise blinked. Yes. Victoria tells us you're creative. What field, exactly? The room fell quiet. Elise felt every molecule of pressure land squarely on her chest. I'm a designer, she said calmly. Digital design. UX, branding, some front-end development. The man tilted his head. Interesting. And is that your background academically as well?
No, she said.
My degree is in art history. A slight pause. The kind that feels louder than words.
Ah, he said.
So, a creative mind. That explains Victoria's interest. The implication wasn't subtle. It hung there, stinking of condescension, like she was some aesthetic indulgence rather than a person of substance. Elise felt her throat tighten. But then Victoria spoke, voice steady and calm. Elise has worked with early-stage startups and corporate rebrands. Her interface redesign for a finance app last quarter increased engagement by 23%. She's modest, but she's good at what she does. The man smiled, not quite genuine. Impressive. Though I imagine your world and ours don't intersect often. Elise smiled tightly. They do more than you think. Design is about guiding people, about clarity, about giving people something they don't even realize they need yet. That's not so different from running a company, is it? A murmur of amusement moved around the table. Someone even smiled for real. Victoria looked at her, not with surprise, but with something warmer.
Deeper. Pride.
After the meeting, as they stepped into the hallway, Victoria slipped her hand around Elise's waist and whispered, "You didn't have to say anything. But I'm glad you did." Elise's hands were still shaking. "I didn't plan to. That makes it even better." "I don't want to be your proof," Elise said. "Your prop. Your look how grounded I am accessory." Victoria stopped walking. "Is that how it felt?" For a second. "I'm sorry." Elise looked up at her. "But also, I get it. This is your world. You're allowed to protect your position in it. She broke off, sighing. I don't want to lose myself just because I'm next to someone powerful. Then don't, Victoria said.
You didn't today.
You owned it. You put him in his place with a sentence. Elise blinked. You saw that. Of course I did. He was a jerk. He's a relic, Victoria muttered. Most of them are. But you handled it better than most of my execs would have. You really think I was good in there? Victoria stopped, turned her fully to face her. I think you were brilliant. Elise tried not to blush. She failed. That night, they skipped the networking dinner and disappeared into the woods instead. There was a trail behind the resort, freshly dusted in snow, and they walked it in silence for a while. Victoria's gloved hand wrapped around Elise's, breath visible in the cold. The mountains were darker now.
Still.
Watching. I keep waiting for this to collapse, Elise said softly. For the moment where I wake up and realize you were never mine. I was never anyone's, Victoria replied. Not until you. Elise stopped walking. Do you mean that? Yes. Even if this gets harder? Especially if it does. Elise leaned into her, pressing her forehead to Victoria's shoulder. I'm scared. So am I, Victoria whispered. But I'm not going anywhere. Later, back in the suite, they made love slowly, without urgency, as if every kiss was a confirmation, every touch a promise. Elise didn't feel like a stranger anymore. She felt like something had shifted, like maybe, just maybe, the mountain was beginning to accept her. And in the dark, as she lay tangled in Victoria's arms, she whispered something she hadn't said in years. I think I'm falling in love with you. She felt Victoria's breath catch. Then arms tightened around her. Don't think, Victoria whispered. Just fall. I'll catch you. The day after the boardroom incident, Elise woke up in the Langford suite feeling like the world had shifted half a degree. Not enough to knock everything over, but enough that nothing sat quite where it used to. Victoria was already awake, sitting at the small table near the window, her laptop open, a steaming mug of coffee in hand. She wore glasses Elise had never seen before, thin black frames that made her look softer, almost vulnerable. Good morning, Elise murmured, voice still thick with sleep. Morning, Victoria said without looking up. Coffee? God, yes. Elise pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders as she padded barefoot across the floor. She accepted the mug and took a sip. You work even on vacation? This isn't vacation. You brought me to the mountains, Victoria. Correction. I brought you into the fire. Elise smirked. And yet, I'm still standing. You did more than stand yesterday. You put Anthony Green in his place with fewer words than I've ever managed. Elise leaned against the table. Do I get a trophy for that? You get me, Victoria said simply. Elise blinked. The words hung there, heavy and clear. You say things like that so easily. It's not easy, Victoria replied. But it's true. Elise felt the familiar tremble inside her, equal parts hope and fear. I meant what I said last night, she whispered. About falling. I know. And you. I'm already there. Victoria looked up then, eyes direct, exposed. I just don't know what happens now. I've never built something like this. Not with anyone who mattered. Elise sat down across from her. Then we learned together. But it only works if we both keep showing up. Even when it gets messy? Especially then. A pause. Victoria hesitated. There's something I haven't told you. Elise went still. Okay, it's not bad, Victoria rushed to add. Not in the way you're thinking. But someone from my past. Cassandra. Elise stiffened. Is she going to be a problem? I don't think so. But she's not thrilled about us. Of course she isn't, Elise muttered. She sees what I see. It's not about jealousy, Victoria said. It's about power. She doesn't like that I've chosen someone outside their world. She thinks you weaken my image. Elise winced. She said that? No. But she will. She's been planting seeds. Quietly. Subtly. And I wanted to tell you, because I don't want you to be blindsided. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I wanted to protect this.
You.
From the poison. But I realize now that pretending it's not happening doesn't protect anything. It just makes it easier for someone like Cassandra to twist the narrative. Elise stood and walked to the window. Snow was falling lightly. Peaceful. Too peaceful for what was crawling under her skin. And what's your plan? I'll shut her down. I always do. What if it's not enough? Elise asked. What if she keeps pushing? Then I push back harder. Elise turned, arms crossed. I'm not afraid of her. I'm afraid of how far you're willing to go to prove something. Victoria stood slowly. I'm not trying to prove anything to her. I'm trying to protect what I love. The word hit like thunder in Elise's chest.
Love.
She hadn't said it. Neither had Elise. Not yet. But there it was, unguarded, unburied. Real. You love me? Elise asked. Victoria didn't blink.
Yes.
I do. Elise took a breath, then another. Then don't fight for me behind closed doors. Fight with me. Side by side. If Cassandra has something to say, let her say it to my face. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Are you sure?
Yes.
I'm not some delicate thing, Victoria. I want this.
I want you.
But not if it means hiding behind you like a shield. Victoria crossed the room and touched her face gently. Then we do this together. That night, at the gala closing the retreat, Elise wore a deep navy dress that clung to her figure like water and shimmered faintly under the soft lighting. Victoria had offered her a stylist, a professional team. Elise had declined. She wanted to show up as herself.
Strong.
Unapologetic. When they walked in together, arm in arm, every head turned. And Cassandra was already there, flawless, poised, drink in hand, smile sharp. She approached them within minutes. Victoria, she said, voice smooth.
And Elise.
You look polished. Thank you, Elise said evenly. I didn't come here to impress you.
No.
Cassandra smiled coolly. That's brave. No, Elise said. It's honest. I'm not here to fit into your world. I'm here because Victoria invited me into hers. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe your world isn't as stable as you think. Cassandra's eyes flicked. A crack. A flicker. You're not what I expected, she said. Neither are you, Elise replied. Victoria watched in silence, her expression unreadable. Later, when they stepped out onto the balcony to breathe, Victoria turned to Elise and whispered, You scared her. Good. You scared me too. In the best way. Elise smiled. Maybe you needed someone to shake you. Maybe I needed someone who wouldn't let me hide. Elise reached for her hand. You don't have to hide anymore. And for the first time, Victoria let herself lean into her fully, not as a shield, not as a symbol, but as a woman choosing to love out loud. By the time they returned from Vermont, Elise already knew something had shifted. It wasn't just the way Victoria looked at her now, less guarded, more grounded, or the warmth in her touch when they walked through the city side by side, hands grazing, no longer pulling back. It wasn't even the way the staff at Langford HQ greeted her with subtle nods of acknowledgement instead of curious glances. It was something deeper.
Public.
Unstoppable. On their third night back in Manhattan, Elise sat curled on Victoria's couch, a glass of wine in hand and her laptop balanced on her knees, staring at the news that had just broken across every major lifestyle site and business blog in the country. Victoria Langford confirms relationship with designer Elise Harper in surprise statement after Vermont retreat. The article quoted a single line from Victoria's press team, released quietly, with no press conference, no photo shoot, no publicity stunt. Just, Ms. Langford confirms her relationship with Ms. Harper and asks for the privacy and respect due to any couple building something real. No embellishments. No spin. Just the truth. Elise felt the weight of it like a stone dropped gently into her chest. When Victoria entered the room, phone in hand, she paused when she saw Elise's face. You saw it. Elise nodded. I thought you said you didn't want to make a statement. I didn't, Victoria said. But after Vermont, after Cassandra, after watching you hold your ground in a room full of people who thought they could define you, I realized something. You're not just someone I'm seeing. You're someone I'm building a life with. That means the world doesn't get to turn you into a rumor. You're not a secret. You're not a whisper. You're mine. Elise's voice caught. You should have told me first. I wanted it to be a gift. But if I overstepped, you didn't, Elise said softly. I just wasn't ready to be seen like that. Not again. But it feels different. It is different. Now, they're not just looking at me. They're looking through me, trying to figure out what kind of woman catches your attention. What I have that they don't. What you have, Victoria said, crossing the room and kneeling in front of her, is mine. Elise exhaled shakily. Then let them look. The media didn't stop there. Over the next week, Elise's name began appearing in places she never expected. A magazine requested an interview. A luxury brand offered her a small design collaboration. Her inbox exploded, not just with praise, but with doubt, scrutiny, and opportunity, all tangled together. They're not interested in me, she told Victoria one night. They're interested in your girlfriend. They want proximity to your brand. Then use it, Victoria said without hesitation. Leverage it. Take their attention and turn it into power. And when they move on, you'll still be you. You're not impressive because you're standing next to me, Elise. You're impressive because you stood next to me and didn't flinch. Elise didn't answer. But that night, when she opened her email and saw the offer from the design firm she'd once applied to straight out of college, an offer she'd been rejected for years ago, now suddenly thrilled to explore potential collaboration, she didn't delete it. She replied. They scheduled a meeting. She went. Alone. She wore dark blue, sleek, understated. She spoke with clarity, confidence, and not once did she mention Victoria's name. When the lead creative director asked, "What's changed since you first applied to us?" Elise smiled and said, "I stopped waiting for permission to be taken seriously." They offered her a freelance position on the spot. That night, she walked into Victoria's penthouse and dropped the contract on the kitchen counter. I got the job. Victoria looked up from her phone, then slowly rose, crossed the room, and swept Elise into a kiss that stole the breath from her lungs. That's what happens when you let them see you. No, Elise whispered. That's what happens when I let myself see me. The celebration was private. Wine, candles, soft music, dancing barefoot on the rug. But the next day brought a ripple neither of them expected. Victoria was scheduled to speak at a Women in Leadership panel, an event she had never once missed in 6 years. Elise had never attended. But this time, Victoria asked her to come. You don't have to say anything. Just be there. With me. Elise agreed. But when they arrived, the dynamic shifted. The moderator, a poised journalist with a subtle agenda, steered the questions toward image, relationships, and how public perception affects leadership. Ms. Langford, she said smoothly, there's been a great deal of public interest in your recent statement. Do you believe being in a high-profile relationship affects your position in the industry? Victoria's gaze didn't waver. If anything, it's made me more grounded, more human, and more aware of how important it is to lead with integrity, not just professionally, but personally. Do you believe your relationship sets a precedent? I believe my relationship reminds people that love isn't a liability. It's a strength. Elise watched the room shift. Some nods. Some tight lips. Some sidelong glances. And Ms. Harper, the moderator continued. How do you handle being a public figure now? Elise's throat dried instantly. She hadn't expected to be addressed. But Victoria touched her hand. Light, steady. Elise spoke without thinking. I'm not a public figure. I'm a designer. I just happen to be in love with someone who is. A pause. A breath. But I think the question is flawed. Handle implies something burdensome. Like love is something to manage. It's not. It's something to build. And if people are watching me do that, then maybe they'll learn to let themselves do it too. The room fell quiet. Then applause. Soft at first. Then louder. Elise didn't look at Victoria. She couldn't, because she knew that if she did, she'd fall apart from the look she'd find there. Later, in the car, Victoria finally broke the silence. You're not just part of my story anymore, Elise. Elise turned her head. What am I? You're the story I'm proudest of. The first message came at 3:12 a.m. Elise didn't hear it until morning, when the sun was barely rising over the city and her phone buzzed against the nightstand. She reached for it half asleep, blinking hard to focus on the screen. The name she saw there turned her blood cold. Marla Brenner.
The past.
The one person Elise had never mentioned to Victoria. Not because she was hiding her, but because she'd buried her. Or so she thought. The text was short. Saw you on the news.
Cute.
You always did like powerful women. Hope she's ready for the damage. Elise sat up in bed, heartbeat spiking. She read it again and again, trying to find something less sharp in the words, but there was nothing. Just venom. Just threat. And underneath it all, something Elise didn't want to name.
Guilt.
She got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Victoria, and padded into the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she poured coffee. Not from fear of Marla herself, but from what her reappearance represented. A life Elise had run from. A person she had once been. One she never wanted Victoria to meet. Elise. Victoria's voice was groggy, low, laced with concern. What is it? Elise turned too fast. Nothing. Just couldn't sleep. Victoria stepped into the light, bare feet on cold tile, wearing only one of Elise's oversized t-shirts. You're lying. Elise opened her mouth. Closed it. Someone texted me.
Who?
Elise hesitated. Then, my ex. The one before all this? The one I don't talk about.
Victoria's brows knit.
What did she say? Elise handed her the phone. Watched her read it. Watched her expression shift from curiosity to tension. You never mentioned her. There's a reason for that. What kind of damage is she talking about? Elise walked to the window, arms crossed tight around herself. It wasn't a healthy relationship. Did she hurt you? Not physically. Emotionally. Manipulation. Isolation. She dismantled me slowly. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already someone I didn't recognize anymore. Victoria was quiet. Listening. I left one day, Elise continued. Packed a bag, cut ties, vanished. I built everything I have now from the ground up after that. Alone. I didn't want anyone to know because that's not who I am anymore. Victoria stepped closer. Then why is she here now? Because I'm visible. Because she sees a headline and wants to remind me that she still exists. That she can still reach me. Can she? Elise's voice was barely a whisper. Only if I let her. A long pause. Victoria's voice was gentle but steady. Why didn't you tell me? Elise turned, eyes glassy. You never ask. You think I wouldn't have understood? I didn't want to give her oxygen. This isn't about her, Victoria said. This is about trust. We don't get to pick which pieces of each other we love. We don't get to edit our histories. Elise's shoulders dropped. I was ashamed. Of being hurt. Of staying. Of letting it happen. Of not seeing it sooner. Victoria stepped forward, took her hands. I've made mistakes too. I've stayed in things that made me smaller. But we're not those women anymore. You're not broken, Elise. You're brave. But you have to let me stand beside all of you. Not just the polished parts. Elise nodded slowly, tears rising. I didn't know how to say it. You just did. They didn't say much for the rest of the morning. The weight of confession lingered in the air between them, not heavy, but honest. And Elise thought maybe that was what intimacy really was, the willingness to show the pieces that didn't glitter. That afternoon, Victoria's team forwarded an email that made Elise's stomach drop again. Marla had reached out to a journalist. She was offering to give exclusive insights into Elise Harper's complicated past. Elise stared at the email in silence. I'll bury it, Victoria said. I'll call every contact I have. No, Elise said, voice flat. Don't. Let her speak.
What?
If I try to shut her down, it only gives her more power. Let her talk. Let her say what she wants. I'm not hiding anymore. Elise, if you want to be with me, Elise said, you need to know that there are cracks in the foundation. I don't want you defending something you don't fully understand. Victoria stared at her, then nodded. Okay. We let her speak, but I stand beside you when she does. No, Elise said. You stand behind me, because this is my past. I face it. 2 days later, the article dropped. It was everything Elise feared and expected. Dramatic, manipulative, carefully curated to make her look unstable, fragile, like someone with a history of emotional volatility. Elise read every word. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She just closed her laptop, took a breath, and posted a single statement. There are 2 sides to every story. I spent years being silent. But now I have a voice, and I'm not afraid to use it. Survivors don't owe silence to their abusers. I won't correct her narrative. I'll just keep living mine. Fully.
Loudly.
Without shame. The post went viral. The response was overwhelming. Women from across industries reached out. Strangers sent messages of solidarity. Elise's name was no longer just linked to Victoria's. It stood on its own. That night, Victoria came home with tears in her eyes. You didn't need me to protect you, she said. You needed me to believe you. Elise kissed her, slow and deep. And you did. That's all I've ever needed. In the quiet that followed, something settled between them. Something unbreakable. Elise had faced her past, and Victoria had stood still, not as a shield, but as proof that loving someone meant holding space for everything they are, even the pieces they once tried to hide. Elise had never felt so visible in her life. In the weeks following her public statement, her inbox flooded with messages from women, strangers, survivors, creators, executives, thanking her, sharing their own stories, telling her that her courage gave them permission to speak, to breathe, to reclaim. She walked into meetings with a straight back now. Clients listened more intently. Brands stopped seeing her as Victoria Langford's girlfriend and started seeing her as Elise Harper, woman, designer, survivor, voice. But with visibility came noise. Cameras where there hadn't been cameras before. Requests she couldn't always say yes to. And whispers. Always whispers. Elise had learned to walk through them with her head high. But what she hadn't expected was how it would affect Victoria. At first, it was subtle. Missed calls. Shorter replies. Late nights at the office that turned into early mornings. Elise told herself it was just work. Victoria had warned her this quarter would be brutal. But one night, Elise came home to find the penthouse dark, silent, and Victoria in the kitchen, still in her heels, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the counter, and an untouched dinner on the stove. She was staring at nothing. Elise dropped her bag slowly. You okay? Victoria turned like she hadn't heard her come in. You're home early. It's 11:30. Is it? Elise stepped closer. You didn't answer my texts. Phone died. Victoria. A long silence. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Elise studied her. Even me? Victoria finally looked at her. Especially you. That stung more than Elise expected. What's going on? Victoria sighed, ran a hand through her hair. Everything's on fire. The board's on edge. Stock volatility. My PR team is panicking over Cassandra's little power plays, and there's a new exposé being drafted about women in leadership that's, let's just say, not flattering. That's not your fault. I know that. But she didn't sound like she believed it. Elise stepped closer. When's the last time you slept? Not sure. Eaten something? Coffee counts. Elise gently took the glass from her hand. Talk to me. You don't need to worry about this. I'm not worried about the company, Elise said. I'm worried about you. Victoria finally cracked then. Just a fracture, just enough for Elise to see what she'd always suspected lived underneath the polish and power. Exhaustion.
Fear.
Loneliness. I'm used to being the one who holds everything together, Victoria whispered. The one who doesn't flinch, doesn't fall apart. I don't know how to need someone. It feels like failure. Elise reached for her hand. It's not failure. It's human.
You don't understand.
If I falter, it's not just me who falls. It's my staff.
The brand.
The entire company. Then let them fall. Let them wobble. Let someone else hold the weight for a minute. I don't know how. Elise pulled her into a hug. Victoria resisted for 1 second, just one, then melted into it. The strongest woman Elise had ever met trembled in her arms like a wire finally snapping. I can't breathe sometimes, Victoria said, voice muffled. The pressure, the expectation, the eyes on me all the time. It used to feel like power. Now it feels like chains. Elise held her tighter. Then break them. I'm right here. That night, Elise made her tea, got her out of the heels, pulled her hair back, sat her down on the couch and ran fingers through her hair until she fell asleep in her lap. The next morning, Victoria didn't go to the office. Elise didn't either. They stayed home, cooked pancakes, sat barefoot on the floor, talked about nothing and everything. Victoria was quieter than usual, less sharp, less in control, but more present. And Elise realized something she hadn't known she was waiting for. For so long, she'd wondered if she was strong enough to survive next to Victoria's brilliance. Now she realized it wasn't about surviving beside her. It was about holding her when she dimmed, about being the light when she forgot her own. You think they'll forgive you for disappearing today? Elise asked gently. Let them wait, Victoria said, biting into a pancake. I built the empire. I decide when to return to the throne. Elise laughed. Victoria didn't. She stared at her plate. What if I don't want the throne anymore? Elise blinked. What do you mean? What if I want something smaller? Quieter? What if this version of me, the one who cooks and laughs and doesn't have to fight all the time, what if this is the only version that feels real anymore? Elise placed her fork down. Then we burn the castle. Victoria looked up, startled. What? If the throne doesn't fit anymore, we burn the castle down and build a house. With fewer windows. No press. Just you and me and something real. Victoria exhaled a shaky breath. You'd really give all this up? I didn't build an empire. I built a life. And you're the best part of it. Victoria's eyes filled, just for a second. God, I love you. I know, Elise said. But say it again anyway. I love you, Victoria whispered. More than power. More than image. More than anything I ever thought I needed. Elise leaned forward and kissed her.
Slow. Sure.
Like she wasn't just kissing a woman. She was kissing home. In the quiet that followed, Elise said, You always catch me when I fall. Let me be the one who holds you this time. Victoria didn't reply. She just pulled her closer and didn't let go. They started making plans on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic. There were no candlelit speeches, no ultimatums, or grand confessions. It was just a quiet conversation over morning coffee in Elise's kitchen, sunlight cutting through the blinds as Victoria, still barefoot, still slightly disheveled, looked up from her cup and said, I want out. Elise looked at her. Of what? The board. The title. The headlines. All of it. Elise didn't blink. Are you sure? No, Victoria admitted. But I'm tired. And when I imagine my life 5 years from now, I don't see more board meetings. I see your hand in mine. I see mornings like this.
Peace.
A life that doesn't chew me up and expect me to smile through it. Elise sat beside her, quiet. That's not a small decision. Neither are you. Elise swallowed. So, what do you want to do? I want to step back. Sell part of the company. Appoint a new CEO. Keep enough to stay connected, but far enough to breathe. Maybe buy that little gallery space we saw in Soho. Turn it into something real. For both of us. Elise's chest tightened. That sounds like a future. It is, Victoria said softly. But only if you want it to. Elise nodded. I want it. And just like that, something shifted. Not in the way the media shifts when it sniffs out scandal. Not like the slow unraveling of a lie. It was something deliberate. Grounded. The soft, sacred click of two lives beginning to braid together. They told no one at first. Elise continued with her freelance work, now more respected than ever. Victoria began taking quiet steps behind the scenes, meeting with legal teams, restructuring proposals, preparing for a handoff. They stopped attending events, stopped accepting interviews. For the first time, the world buzzed around them, but they didn't move with it. They moved with each other. On a rainy Thursday, Victoria showed Elise a property listing, a quiet brownstone in Brooklyn, with ivy climbing the bricks and a sunlit back patio. Elise stared at the screen and whispered, "Is this real? It could be. Is it ours? If you say yes." Elise said yes. They made plans to visit it the following week, to walk through it together, to measure a life in hallways and light, and the sound of laughter filling a space that belonged to no one but them. But the storm came first. Not a literal one, though the city was drenched that night. Streets flooded. Thunder cracked across the sky like something ancient waking up. Elise was at her apartment, packing an overnight bag. Victoria was still at the Langford offices, tying up loose ends she couldn't hand off yet. At 10:03 p.m., Elise's phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, she wouldn't answer. But something in her gut turned over. She picked up. Silence. Then, "You think she's safe with you?" Elise froze. "Who is this? You really think she'll choose you over everything she's built?" The voice was low,
Distorted.
familiar. "You're not strong enough for her. You're just convenient. A pretty distraction. You're not her future. You're a phase." "Marla," Elise whispered. How did you get this number? Does it matter? What do you want?" "To remind you who you were. Who you are." Elise's hand tightened around the phone. "You don't get to define me. And yet here you are, still picking up when I call." Elise hung up. Her whole body shook. Not from fear, but rage. Violation. The past clawing through the walls she had so carefully built. She called Victoria immediately. No answer. Called again. Voicemail. Elise grabbed her coat, her bag, her keys. Something in her chest screamed go. The rain was brutal. Taxis were scarce. She jumped on the subway soaked, barely registering the stairs. She ran the 3 blocks from the station to Langford headquarters, heart pounding harder with every step. The lobby was locked. Of course it was. But Elise wasn't thinking. She was moving. She called Victoria again. Finally, she picked up. "Elise." Her voice was soft, distracted. "Are you okay?" "No," Elise snapped. "Where are you?" "In the conference room. Last meeting of the night." "Why?" Elise didn't wait. She buzzed every intercom until security finally answered, explained frantically, breathlessly, who she was. The guard recognized her, reluctantly let her up. The elevator felt like a coffin. When the doors opened, Elise didn't wait. She marched straight through the darkened hallway and burst into the conference room. Victoria looked up, startled. "What?" Elise didn't let her finish. She crossed the room, rainwater still clinging to her skin, eyes wild. "She called me." "Who?" "Marla." Victoria stood. "What?" "She called. Tonight. Said, I'm not enough. That I'm a phase. That you'd never choose me over your empire." Victoria's face darkened. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I'm tired of her shadow crawling through my life. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. I'm tired of wondering if I'm strong enough to hold you when the world keeps trying to pry us apart." Victoria came to her, hands on her arms. "You don't have to hold me alone." "Then prove it," Elise whispered. "Because I'm giving you everything. My past. My future. My fear. My hope. I need to know you're all in." Victoria stared at her. Then, slowly, she pulled Elise in and kissed her like the end of the world. Like silence breaking. Like thunder calming. "I'm all in," she said into her mouth. "I've been all in since the moment you sat at the wrong table." Elise let out a half laugh, half sob. "Then let's be done with the past. Tomorrow," Victoria said, "we go to that brownstone. We sign the papers. We build our life. And Marla? She gets nothing. Not another second of our time. Not another corner of your mind." Elise exhaled. leaned into her. And for the first time since the storm began, inside and out, she felt the ground steady beneath her feet. They signed the papers on a quiet Friday morning. No press. No handlers. No lawyers flanking them with clipped voices and briefcases. Just Elise, Victoria, a realtor who kept smiling like she knew she was watching the end of one story and the beginning of something rare, and a set of silver keys that trembled slightly in Elise's hand when they landed in her palm. The brownstone looked different now. Not because anything had changed, but because they had. The moment Victoria unlocked the front door and stepped inside, she exhaled like the weight of the city had finally slid off her back. Elise followed behind her, closing the door quietly, then leaning against it for a long breath. The silence was thick but warm. Possibility hummed in the walls. "It's empty," Elise whispered. "Not for long," Victoria said. They wandered the rooms together slowly. Elise traced her fingers along the windowsills, already imagining plants there, art on the walls, soft rugs, and late morning light flooding through the kitchen. Victoria moved like someone learning to breathe again, hand brushing along door frames, taking it all in. "This is the first place I've ever owned that wasn't for the brand," she said. "It's not for optics. Not for legacy. It's just for us." Elise smiled. "That means we can mess it up. And fill it with too many books. And too many mugs. And the wrong color paint. And laughter," Elise said softly. "God, I want there to be so much laughter in here." Victoria crossed the room, pulled her into a kiss. "Then let's make it happen." That night, they lay on a mattress on the floor of their new bedroom, still in their clothes, surrounded by takeout containers and unopened boxes. No furniture. No curtains. Just the hum of a city outside and the soft sound of rain on the windows. "What now?"
Elise asked.
"Now we live," Victoria said. "We wake up. We burn the toast. We learn how to share a closet. We fight over movies. We buy too many throw pillows. We build it all from the ground up." Elise looked over at her. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Victoria admitted. "You?" "Only when I remember how badly I want this to last." Victoria reached for her hand. "Then let's make it last." And they did. Days turned into weeks. They filled the house with color, with mismatched furniture, with the sound of music drifting from every room. Elise painted again. Real painting, not for work, not for anyone's approval. Victoria started writing, something she hadn't done in over a decade. A memoir? A manifesto?
She didn't know yet.
Only that Elise had cracked open something soft in her that she didn't want to close again. They hosted dinners for friends, turned the tiny guest room into a studio, turned the garden into a jungle of herbs and failed tomatoes. And through it all, they learned how to be together. Not perfectly, but honestly. Elise learned that Victoria slept with the window open even in winter, that she hummed while brushing her teeth, that sometimes she got quiet when she was overwhelmed, not out of distance but protection. Victoria learned that Elise needed time before big things, that she cried during documentaries, that she apologized more than she should, even when nothing was her fault. One night, after a small party at the house, wine, soft music, friends talking on the floor until 2 a.m., Elise stood in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a half-empty bottle of sparkling water, and said, "I've never felt like this before." Victoria leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "Like what?" "Safe.
Seen. Still me."
"But more." "You are more," Victoria said. "You're the best thing I ever accidentally found." Elise smiled. It was the mistake that changed your life. The best table you ever sat at by accident." They laughed, kissed, held each other for a long time, like the world couldn't touch them here. Because it couldn't. Because they had built something untouchable, not perfect, not smooth, but unbreakable. Months passed. The world moved. Headlines shifted to newer stories. But their story stayed.
Steady. Real.
One late afternoon, Elise came home to find Victoria in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, holding a small box in her hands. Elise raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Something reckless," Victoria said. "Come here." Elise walked over, suspicion and warmth tangled together. Victoria opened the box.
A ring.
Simple. Elegant. A stone the color of stormlight. I know we said we didn't need this. That the house was the promise. That the life we built already said everything. Elise stared at her, eyes wide. But I want to say it anyway, Victoria continued. I want to ask you anyway. I want to stand in front of everyone, whoever we choose, and tell them that loving you wasn't just a choice. It was the smartest, hardest, most beautiful thing I've ever done. Elise's throat closed. Are you proposing to me in the dirt? Yes, Victoria said, because this is ours. And I don't care if there's champagne or violins. I just care if you say yes. Elise laughed.
Cried.
Nodded.
Yes.
God, yes. Victoria slipped the ring on her finger. Elise didn't even look at it. She just launched herself into her arms, knocking them both into the grass, breathless, tangled, whole. And above them, the sky stretched wide. No headlines. No shadows. Just light. Just love. Just the life they chose. Together forever. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.